Well, hello and aloha, y'all. We are back here with my very special friend slash business partner and the all the above, Brandon Kuramoto, for our part two of our little two-part series that we have going here. Just sharing a story or Brandon's story of his past year and a half or almost a couple of years now, it seems like, just his journey. So where did we leave off in our last video, Brandon? I cut you off right before we were getting into kind of the next part. If you wanted to do a very short recap of the previous phase we were talking about before getting
Yeah,
into.
sure. So we talked about, I think it was February 23.
Mhm.
That's when everything started go south, and found out I had CHF and kidney failure.
Yeah,
Lost lost my eyesight a few months later in my right eye. Found out I had diabetic retinopathy,
yeah,
and then that started to improve. And then in October, that's when I woke up with the bleeding. Did 9 days in the step down unit. Almost lost my life a couple of times. A couple of those days there, and then was recovering. A couple months recovering from that, and then led to, I guess, present day today. Kind of the area of where we're at today.
yeah, yep, yep. So, and kind of tell us what the next thing that kind of happened after that was.
So after that, essentially every month I have a nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor. A lot of people don't know what a nephrologist is because they've
Mhm.
never had any issues with kidneys, but essentially
Sure.
a nephrologist is a kidney specialist. So when you're diagnosed with kidney failure, it doesn't matter what stage. At that point, I think when I was first diagnosed, I was stage what they call like stage 3A.
Mhm.
um there's essentially 5 stages of kidney disease. So within every stage, they want to meet with you. They do blood work. Whenever you have anything wrong with your kidney, they want to make sure that you're doing a lot of blood work. I mean, you're doing blood work every 2 weeks to a month. So I would go in and do blood work, and they want to make sure, is your, you know this probably won't make sense to a lot of people, but is your creatinine levels at a certain part? Where's your EFGR, your kidney function? You know, there's probably about 10 to 15 different tests that they want to look at to be able to see how your kidney is functioning and what's progressing. At that time, they essentially had told me within about 2 years, I would be 85% likely to need dialysis in 2 years. They said just kind of the way it's been pacing, you're going to need dialysis in 2 years. So I was
Wow.
like, oh, wow, that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it. And they said, and within 5 years, you're going to be at 98% likely that you're going to need dialysis. So if you could get past that 2 years, in 5 years, you're definitely going to need it. So they're like, you just have to kind of prepare for that and just have an understanding of what your future looks like. So I was kind of preparing for the 2 to 5 years, just
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, I got 2 years, maybe this year I'll recover, get better, go to work, do all the things that I need to do,
Right.
hustle and do all of that. And started getting really tired, really weak. Walking, it felt like I was walking in sand, like when you're walking on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just felt like I was constantly walking in sand, like my feet were buried in the sand and I'm like dragging. And I thought it had to do with my heart originally. So went in to see the cardiologist. Cardiologist said, "Hey, Brandon, yeah, we have great news. Your heart is actually returned to normal." And I'm like, "What? Like, how is that?" They said, "With your dieting, your exercising, reversing diabetes, all these different things, your heart rate is back to 65%, 70%. So that's at normal." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Holy cow. So why am I out of breath? Why do I feel the way I do? Why do I get lightheaded? Why are all these different things?" And so I started seeing my nephrologist, and she said, she goes, it has to do with your kidneys.
Mm.
She goes, your kidneys, if you don't know this, like your kidneys, number one, they filter out toxins. So anything that's toxic to your body, a healthy human, healthy person, they're going
Yeah.
to filter it out through their urine or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. When you have kidney disease, you're not able to filter out those toxins the way you're supposed to. So your kidneys aren't functioning at full capacity, so those toxins stay in your body. So I
Mhm.
started noticing I was getting brain fog,
Mhm.
where before I was, I would say that I was sharp as a pin, right? I knew I was like on it all the time. I knew everything that I needed to do. I could think of something I needed to do today, and within the hour, I don't remember what I was thinking about.
Wow.
Like it was that crazy where in my head, because I'm at that age where I'm getting a little bit older now, I'm thinking
You might
maybe
be just getting
it's
forgetful a little.
yeah, maybe I'm just getting older, right? I'm graciously getting older and I'm forgetting things and whatever it may be. And I started making jokes like maybe I have early onset, Alzheimer's or
Yeah.
dementia.
Yeah.
And just as like kind of like a light thing. And I started
Yeah.
realizing like it was frustrating. It was getting me really frustrated. So I brought it up to my nephrologist and she goes, Brandon, she's like, it's a little concerning that that's happening. She goes, because that means that the toxins are like, they're not
Getting to you.
getting out. So it's starting to affect you.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, oh, great. So she goes, we're going to run more tests. We're going to see what's going on. And I remember it has to do with February for some reason, but it was early February. I think it was like a day before my wife's birthday. I got these tests done and found out that my stage 3 had already progressed to stage 5. So it was at end stage renal failure. So they call it
And what month was
ESRD.
this?
Say it
When was
again.
this? When did this happen? What month was it?
So this happened February of this year.
This year. Yeah, okay.
So it was all within a matter of like literally a couple of months, where it progressed from stage 3 to stage 5. So stage 5 essentially is end stage renal failure, or renal disease. That's the worst that you could be. And essentially at that point, they essentially will tell you like, hey, you need to get on dialysis.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, you need to figure out like how do you want to do dialysis? Do you want to get hemodialysis where you actually go into a center and you do it 3 times a week and it's like 4 hours a day? Or do you want to do it at home where you could do it for yourself? It's more natural because it's every day and you
Yeah.
do it when you're asleep. So they're like, that's another option. Or the third option is just don't treat it and talk about hospice. And I'm like, well, I'm only 48 years old. Like,
And
what
I
do you?
want to remind everybody this is in February and we're in April right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So dealing with that and going from the mindset of like, hey, things, and you've been there, you've gone through a lot of trauma within your adult life and things that you've gone through as well
Yeah.
that you're still going through and you're getting over.
Mm-hmm.
When you expect, right, you expect something's going to happen down the road,
Mm-hmm.
2 to 5 years, you kind of
Mm-hmm.
prepare for that, right?
Yep.
In my head I was already prepared for that,
Yep.
and then to find out, wait a second, that 2 years now is actually 2 months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to prepare for it
Yeah, you're
now.
like, how did we get from there to there? Because then you almost feel like you have more like hope because you know you have some time and anything can happen during that time. There could be an amazing solution that comes up during
Yeah,
2 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a shock. So, obviously with anything else that happens in my life, it's like, okay, you adapt, you adjust, you try to figure out how do I make the best of it. Now mind you, like before, I mean, everything hit the ceiling, right? Everything hit the fan. I was like, what am I going to do? Already, you got to figure I've been out of work already going on a year now.
Yep.
That's not normal. That's not me. Number two, I'm on disability. That's not me. It's like I've always been the type of person to be like, these people need to work and why are they, taking advantage of my tax dollars and all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
And when I'm in that position, now I start to realize like how important that truly is. And, losing the financial freedom before of being able to pay for specific things and now not being able to do it, where
Yeah,
I'm like, I have to watch every dollar that comes in, right?
absolutely.
Because I have to get through these things, so there's a lot of uncertainty that goes on mentally, physically, emotionally, that goes on. And obviously, you know your partner goes through a lot as well, right? There's a lot of things that go on with them too. And it's been a challenge, having to deal with this. I had an operation in February 9th. So literally 8 days later, I had an operation to get the catheter put into my stomach for home dialysis. Now, a lot of people probably aren't aware of how the different dialysis works. They automatically think,
It's just, yeah, because when you think of it, like, oh, you got to go to the center, you got to do your thing.
yeah,
That's what people are just thinking.
yeah. So I actually, I chose to go with, being able to speak to my wife about it, and we both agreed, with my lifestyle and kind of the way I am. It's like, hey, let's try it at home.
Yeah,
The difference of doing it at home versus doing it in a center is the center is all done by a nurse.
right.
They're trained professionally. That's all they've been doing. At
Mm-hmm.
home, you have got to become the nurse. You
Mm-hmm.
got to make sure you're in a sterile environment. You got to make sure you're washing your hands every bit of the way. You
Yeah,
got to make sure, because essentially I have an open catheter that's in my stomach. So it's kind of like my heart.
yeah.
If something gets in there, or let's say dog fur or dust or anything,
Yeah.
bacteria, I could get really sick. So I have to keep very sterile. I have to make sure that it's protected. And then what I do is the nighttime, the way my life looks now is an hour before I'm thinking about going to bed. I have to go upstairs. I got to wash my hands really well. I got to put a mask on. I got to get my table out. I got to
Mm-hmm.
get 15-pound bags of solution. Essentially, the solution that's put in me is sugar water. It's with dextrose.
Okay. Okay.
So what I do is I have to cut these bags open. I have to wipe the bags off, check expiration dates, check the solution to make sure there's no holes in the bag.
Yeah.
I have to put the bag on the machine itself. Then I got to break out all the tubing that gets connected to the bags, to the machine, to
Mm-hmm.
myself. I
Mm-hmm.
have to set all of that up. Then I got to turn the machine on. I got to let the machine actually warm up. It has to warm up the bag. And then I have to wait for about 30 minutes for that solution to warm up before I could
Mm-hmm.
even what they would call connect
Got
to
it.
start treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Treatment that I do essentially is 8 hours a night.
Mm.
So if I go to sleep at 12 o'clock, I'm stuck in bed
Till eight.
until 8 in the morning.
Yeah, that's tough. I was actually just talking to someone about my sleep schedule. Like, well, how much I need to get at least 9 hours, and I'm like, 9 hours,
Yeah.
8 hours is a lot. I don't even know if I can stay in bed for 8 hours.
Now, mind you, I have trouble sleeping in general. So before that, I was suffering with insomnia from kidney failure, and I wasn't sleeping.
Mm,
So being stuck in bed for 8 hours,
take
you
forever.
can't do anything because you're connected to a tube. So you have to time that. So once I actually connect,
If
there's
you have to go to the
essentially,
bathroom, if
huh?
if you have to go to the bathroom.
Well, yeah, TMI, I actually have to have like a jug there or something that I could
Hey,
actually like a
listen,
journal, and I
I
just
want.
stand up and I have to go there.
Yeah.
So, and mind you, if I have to do the other job, other business and go
Just
number
forget
two,
it.
I'm done. Like, there's no way I could do that. So you have to disconnect. If that were the case, I would have to disconnect. I would have to make sure that I'm sterile. I would go to the restroom. I would come back, and then I would have to throw everything away, redo everything that I just did when I
Oh,
first connected.
that's right.
So that's the life of somebody that has to go through this. And essentially it's a total of 8 liters of solution that gets injected in me in 4 cycles. So it's 2 liters of fluid every 4 hours, or not every 4 hours, every 2 hours that
Okay.
gets injected, and then it gets drained and then it injects me again. So it's kind of like every 2 hours you feel like you just ate
And
Thanksgiving.
so you still do this.
Yeah, I do it every night, 7 nights a week.
And what is so after that, after they put you on dialysis and they gave you these options, then kind of what came after that?
So after that, they talk to you about, essentially if you want to try to get put on a transplant list.
Okay.
So that's an option. Some people don't want to go on a transplant list, and you would think, why? Why
Yeah,
don't people want to go on a transplant list? Number one, today, which I never thought about obviously until I was in the position, but I
sure.
realized you have to go through a lot of training. I thought when you go on dialysis, it's like, hey, you're going to be put on a transplant list. Cool. No, you
Mm.
actually have to go through boatload of testing, a boatload. Like they have to do EKGs, a stress test, they have to do a colonoscopy, they got to do a stomach x-ray, they got to do a bunch of different tests. They have to make sure that you're healthy enough to be able to get on a
Handle it.
list.
Okay, I got it.
Then they
And
want to
how
make
long
sure.
did you finish all your testing already for that?
I did. Yeah,
How long
luckily
did
I
that take?
finished it. It took me about 3.5 months to finish all the testing.
Again, something that I think is important for people to understand about something during this process with this particular topic is that people don't think about, like, they think, oh, just go check my kidneys, see if you can take one of my kidneys. And it's like,
Yeah,
so does
yeah.
that mean that the person who could possibly, I know like you had a friend of yours that was saying or offering like maybe you can have one of his or something like that. Like for somebody who wants to be a possible donor, what does that process look like then? Is it as intense as the 3 month thing like you? Like what does that look like?
So the process of being a donor, there's a couple of different ways that you become a donor. Okay. So for me, there's two options. You could find a living donor or you can find a deceased donor. Now that
Mhm.
sounds kind of weird, but a living donor is somebody who says, hey Brandon, family, friend, somebody you know,
Yeah.
someone you don't know, someone
Yeah.
who's alive, right? That says, I want to be able to give you a kidney.
Hmm.
Now, the first thing people need to know is that people can live with one kidney.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are like, "Oh my god, what do you mean donate you an organ?" Like that
Mhm.
sounds scary. And to me too, when I wasn't in this position, it was very scary. I never been put in that position for someone to need one.
Yeah, of
But
course.
to be able to say like, "Hey, take a kidney from me," that just sounds scary. It sounds like it's a major thing.
Yeah.
And by all means, I don't take it lightly. It is a major decision,
Uh,
right? It's a major decision as a donor for someone who's alive to
yeah.
say, "Hey, I want to be able to give the gift of life to
Yeah.
a stranger or to someone I know,"
Yeah. Of
right?
course.
And so that's the first thing. But the second thing you have to realize is number two is what they look for is you have to be healthy.
Yeah.
If you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have an autoimmune disease, you automatically you're disqualified. You can't donate
Right.
to somebody. So
Right.
you have to be healthy. Then they look at blood type. They look at are you a matched blood type?
Mm.
So once all those are okay, once that person gets put on the transplant list,
Hmm.
you can actually start testing to become a donor. Now, those tests that you have to do are kind of like the same test that
Yeah.
I would do, right? That I had to go through. The difference is the amount of time it takes to get a living donor
Hmm.
versus a deceased donor. Right now, there's over 130,000 people that are on a donor list in general,
General. Yeah.
right? 100,000 of those people are on there for a kidney. 100,000.
That is
It
crazy.
takes the average person 8 to 10 years in California, by the way, to get a deceased donor kidney. 8 to 10 years. Now, mind you, if I was stage two, stage three, okay, that's fine. Whatever we need to do. I'm at the final stage, so I'm at end stage renal failure. So when they tell you take tests, I want to take all the tests in one day, but
Of
I
course.
couldn't. Like I could
Yeah.
only take it when they're available.
Yep.
And every day that goes by, I'm thinking, like, is today my last day?
Of course. Yeah.
So there's people today that when they say, you are given the gift of life, there are people in my situation that are at end stage renal disease that we don't know really how much time. I don't want to make it into like kind of like a dreary subject, but
Yeah.
in all reality, that's the case. But what I didn't know before is that so with me,
Yeah.
I have Kaiser, right? So let's say somebody else says, "Hey, I would love to donate, but like, God, that's going to be expensive.
Hmm.
Like, I have to pay for co-pays and all this other stuff."
Yeah.
What I found out is they don't actually do that.
Mm.
Everything that they have to do, the tests that they have to do, it
Uh-huh.
actually gets billed to my insurance
Interesting.
because they're helping me as the
You
patient.
got it.
So the hospitals work together essentially to put that test onto essentially my insurance. So they would still have to go through, they would call the kidney hotline transplant center and they would essentially say, "Hey, I'm looking to help ABC patient. I would like to start the testing. What do I need to do?" And they would essentially walk them through what they need to do. Now, the average time span for a living donor
Mhm.
is within a year. So you're
Okay.
going from 8 to 10 years to less than 1
Uh,
year.
got it.
Big difference,
Yeah,
big
that's a huge
difference.
difference. And so are you
So,
on the list for that currently now?
I am not, I'm waiting, I did all the tests, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing, when I finished the test, they said, "Yes, I'm on the transplant list." No, you're not. You actually have to go to the board. The board, they submit your paperwork to the board. The
Yeah.
board of the hospital has to approve it. Once they approve it, they refer you. So Kaiser doesn't have a transplant center. They actually work with the major hospitals within California. So they work with like Cedar Sinai, they work with Loma Linda,
Okay.
UCLA,
Yeah.
all the big hospitals. So with Cedars, it now goes to Cedars. Cedars board now has to meet with me. They meet with me May 1st. And then once I meet with them, they do an evaluation. Once they approve it, then they submit it to the national registry. And then that's when I get approved or get denied. So that's something too that they look at. They want to make sure that I'm healthy. I have to be under a certain BMI, which I'm under that now. I reversed my diabetes. There's a lot of things that I've put into place to kind of
Sure.
set me up for success.
Yeah.
But there's still things that can happen, like with me, because I had the transfusion in
Mhm.
October, I now have antibodies in my system. So now I have a higher rate of rejecting kidneys that are donated to me
Mm.
just for the fact that I have antibodies in my system now. So what happens is it
Does it
gets
stay
me,
like that then?
say it again.
How long does it stay like that for then, or does it change? Or
It's supposed to, but because it was only in October, they wanna make sure they're gonna have to run tests to see, like, how many antibodies that I have, but essentially, I'm put now at a higher risk, so not only am I end-stage
because
renal
you don't
disease.
wanna go through the whole process, find a kidney, have somebody give you a
Correct.
kidney, and then it doesn't take.
Correct.
Got it.
So that's the other thing. So they're looking into that as well. So they have to figure out. So it gives me a couple of points on the system. It raises me up as being like more of a compatible donor to
Mhm.
get like the only people in front of me now would be like kids, teenagers, people like that are younger that, obviously they have more of their life ahead of them.
Sure.
I'm at an age where I'm still young. They can still consider me young.
Yeah.
But I have that issue that I have to overcome. So, I might get the number, when I get, on the list, they may give me the number of opportunities, but there's a higher chance that it's going to be rejected because of the antibodies.
Mhm.
So being able to find that donor is going to be, kind of a challenge, but I'm faithful that it's going to happen and whatever direction it goes into,
Right.
it's going to happen,
And it's one of those things where it's like you can just kind of do your part, and this is really when it comes to anything, really. As long as you're doing your part, and then you have to, like, literally leave everything else up to
Yeah.
God, but you've definitely been doing your part, I do have to
Well,
say.
and it's crazy too because originally I was thinking, maybe my sons, my older sons,
Right.
and they're like, well, actually, unless they're 25, they can't donate.
Oh, okay, so you have to be at least 25 years old?
Yeah, so that's another thing I didn't know either. So I'm like, holy cow. So it kind of puts me in my position where I'm just like, I don't have a big family. So I don't have uncles and aunts and cousins and all these other people that I could just choose from and say, hey, would you mind
"Hey,
donating
can you
a
go get
kidney?
yeah, what's going on?"
And normally when you're unhealthy, you have hereditary, right? You have the genes of
Yes.
brothers and sisters that have high blood pressure
Right,
or they're diabetic.
right.
So that kind of eliminates that as well. So it kind of just kind of puts you in a little more of a box.
Mhm.
where you're relying on hopefully your story getting out there and there's somebody out there that says, hey, I would be interested and
Yes,
you know.
absolutely, which also brings me to kind of the next thing that I wanted to kind of touch on now that we explain to people what the process looks like and the complications that come along with it too. Um, but I'm really at least happy to know that there could be possibilities of solutions.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, how can somebody get a hold of us that may have either insight into this that can give us some tips or be interested in testing to see if they could be a donor? And also, too, can somebody start testing already for something like this, even though you're still in the process of certain approvals and whatnot?
Yeah, so I think in general, the best way to do it is to wait till I get on a transplant list. Now, if it's not for me, this whole series is not really for me.
Yeah.
I want to bring awareness to anybody, whether it's a liver, whether it's a pancreas, whether
Well,
whatever it is,
listen,
whatever it may be.
more things than one thing can be true at once.
Exactly, exactly. So my whole thing is, if you know somebody who is in a position where, they need a kidney, number one, it's very awkward to talk about. It's a taboo subject. The person going through it, as much as they want to share their story, they're kind of embarrassed or they're kind of ashamed to share their story
Mhm.
because you're not asking for like, hey, can you send me $10?
Yeah.
You're pretty much saying like, hey, can you give me your organ?
Yeah.
That's pretty scary. So it takes a special kind of somebody who can look past those things and say, you know what, if there's a way for me to be able to offer the gift of life by donating a kidney, then that's something I want to learn more about. And there's ways to do it. You could go on to the National Kidney Foundation website. You could go on there. You could
Mhm.
reach out to Chantel. You could reach out to me directly. Email the Believers in Business email address. Go on the YouTube channel, whatever it may be. You could reach out to anybody and ask like, "Hey, how do I help?" Whether it's for me directly or for somebody else, you want to ask questions, or maybe you have an experience that you've gone through.
Mhm.
Share those experiences with everybody else because this is something that can save a life. You're not feeding a family who's starving. You're actually helping somebody who really has no other opportunity.
Mhm.
Can I wait for a deceased donor? Preferably, yeah. Am I guaranteed that, I'll be around 8 to 10 years? No, none of us are guaranteed,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
But when I look at what I have at stake, I'm hoping for the best, right? I'm expecting the worst, but I'm hoping for the best. And if it changes anybody's mindset and just kind of like sparking interest in learning more about it, and then maybe you're sharing it with somebody else who somebody else shares it with somebody else, ten rows down, they're like, hey, I've always thought about it. They wouldn't have known unless they saw the video. So that's
Absolutely.
something that, building awareness and getting it out there.
And it's just important that you can be that representative for somebody that they know that has the same condition in general that aren't comfortable with speaking about details about it, just in
Yeah.
general. And
Yeah.
so, again, I know this isn't easy for you. It's not easy for me to hear either, you know, but it's necessary. And anybody who has interest in even getting a hold to ask questions to Brandon, and maybe they're going through something similar, or if you want to reach out to us to see how you could be able to help, or if you have interest in possibly helping Brandon or helping somebody that you might know and you just have a few questions, please reach out to us. You can even contact us on our website, which is believersinbusinesscreative.com. You can also contact Brandon on his what kind of platform would you want people to contact you on? Even an email.
Um, there's a couple. I've been so out of the loop. It's been so hard. Like right now, excuse me. Oh,
You're fine.
sorry. Right now, the best way is to just email me. I mean, they could find me on Facebook. They just type up my name, Brandon Kuramoto. They'll find me on Facebook. You could find me on Instagram. I think it's B
And again, you
Kuramoto
can
one.
contact Brandon through us.
Yeah, I
Website.
think the best way though is maybe like even on YouTube or
Sure.
with you, going through that route, or if they want to email me, they can email me. But I think the biggest thing right now is just kind of building awareness. And maybe, you're not somebody who's there, right? Who can say like, hey, maybe you just not that type of person, or you can't because of health issues. And maybe you have a platform that you could spread awareness. That's another way that you can help out. I
Absolutely.
think that's another thing to think about as well, is like, how do you spread the message out there to the masses? And it's
Mhm.
going to start off by, this platform, and then hitting someone else's platform, and then going further and further. Maybe it's someone in business. Maybe it's somebody who we don't even know yet that says,
Mhm.
hey, by the way, I have a network of millions of people and I'd love to share the story, whatever it is. I think, the good thing about it is Believers in Business is the first one to step up to say, hey, look, let's get your message out there. Let's get your story out there.
Mhm.
Which shows, it's not only about business, but it's about people, right? It's about, stories. It's about, really getting the word out there and making a difference. So that's where it's going to really, take effect and, snowball.
Yep. Again, thanks so much, Brandon, and thanks to all of you watching. And again, I'll have everything listed at the bottom of this video of how to contact us or any questions. And we're going to keep you updated. We're going to make this a little bit more of a series so that we can get updates on Brandon and his journey and continue to get educated about this topic some more. So thanks again, Brandon.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for
We'll
taking
talk
the
soon.
time. I'm sending you virtual hugs.
I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much. All
Goodbye.
right. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.